Hey, how's it going, everyone? This is Scott, owner of Three Rivers Painting, a full time entrepreneur and painting contractor here in the Pacific Northwest. And I wanted to make a video today relative to something that had happened. And I don't want to make this video and come across as if I'm complaining, because these homeowners didn't really do anything wrong. It's not their fault. Things happen. It was a little I was a little frustrated because of the track record of how my year has started, and I wanted to share this piece of information to maybe give some insight. Maybe this would never happen to you, maybe it will. But there's two things that I did as a strategy. Um, Sorry, there's a mosquito chasing me. There's two things I did as a strategy because I run a seasonal business. So generally, when I'm sending out a proposal for an interior and exterior project, I take a small deposit, and I do this and I claim that the deposit is non-refundable. And what that does is it is basically committing the homeowner to that schedule. Because in the past, when I've not done that, and I've said, "Oh, I'll just take you, don't worry about a deposit, I'll just put you on the books." Well, you start having a lot of calls and leads coming in, and if your perceived scheduling or calendar is already full based on a verbal agreement between somebody, and there's no commitment, monetary commitment, and those people have an unexpected expense that comes up, they could back out of that. And if it's not the end of the world. Usually, we have extra jobs to fill that. But if you've got employees or subcontractors or people committed to scheduling and other things like supplies, like, you work your schedule around these anticipated jobs. And as if it's not hard enough to run a seasonal service-based business like painting, right? If I'm doing an exterior project, there's a lot of variability in terms of temperatures and weather, in terms of when I can stain a deck or complete an exterior paint job. So there's two things that I did. The first thing was there was a local magazine in our town, and I figured this would be good for branding. And I reached out to them in the late fall or like early winter of about a year ago, and told them my story and how I was starting a painting business and a little bit of my background, and my personal story was pretty intriguing to the owner that I talked to. And so he said, "Well, come on down, we'll talk about it, because obviously you have to pay to be in their magazine." And I was inquiring about cost and to see, what the options were for the future, so that maybe I could invest into some ad space. And I had no idea what the cost would be. Well, I show up, and this was the first scenario. Okay, I show up. I talk to the owner of this magazine. He's a super nice guy, him and his wife, and they lease out a building, and they have several employees. They've built up their magazine company for several years now, and have like 20 or 30 people on payroll. It was voted like one of the best places to work in our town and stuff. So they're very genuine, good-hearted people. And this was more my mistake, but when I met with him, I was just fired up at the idea that I would have some exposure in a local magazine. So I told him I'm not a big company. It's just me right now. I do have some seasonal help, and I may grow the company, but what I'd rather do is not do high volume, and rather work be selective on projects and choose the right clients and do higher end quality work. And um, that was my strategy. And because of that, he said that he didn't have any other painting companies in his magazine. And so he basically told me, "Hey, we don't have any painting companies in here. We have some like remodeling companies and general contractors that are larger, that build homes or remodel them, or install entertainment system patios out back, and all this like really fancy high-end stuff for multi-million dollar homes and people that are high income earners, but not really any painting contractors were in his magazine." So we worked out an arrangement where it's like, "Hey, if you want to pay, I will give you a slight discount, because we have no painting companies. We'd like to help you out. Or we can make a trade where if you want to paint my house, based on the amount of issues we run, we can figure out either a partial trade or an entirely trade for trade." So my intention was to come into this and do a partial trade. Like, maybe we'll run 1 to 2 issues and call it a day, and that's it. And then I could come in and offer him like a 30 or 40% discount in exchange or in lieu of that cost that I would have paid him, and I'm performing like a partial service to paint his house. Well, things got busy, right? And when you're in the summertime and it's the busiest time of the year, I'm just crushing through jobs. I had some help, and things got busy, and he kept saying, "Hey, this is hot on the press. You want to run another issue? Sure, we'll do that. We'll do that." Well, I got too busy. I never ended up making it to his project. Next thing I know, it's fall, and he's calling me up to see if I can get to his project. We're coming into winter. Now, as a painting contractor, every winter I take from November to March, even when I advertise, and I could advertise harder. I don't spend a lot of my stuff is word of mouth, and this is where a lot of painting contractors get themselves in trouble and run out of work and have to significantly discount their work. I'm guilty of it. If you're not running ads and it's not in your budget to be consistently running ads all year long and selling work and getting people on the books for that interior work for the wintertime, you run the possibility of running out of work. And it's something that a lot of painters have a lot of challenges with in seasonal states. And then it becomes like a feast or famine type thing where in the winter everyone's dropping their rates, or if you are charging a premium, you know, you're just doing advertising to make sure you are like the top dog and just plastered in front of everyone's face. So sometimes you can get lucky, you know what I mean? And if you're doing new construction, you could probably stay busier. But I'm residential repaints, that's what I prefer to do. So, anyways, long story short, I ended up getting busy. Next thing I know, I have to paint his entire house for free. Now, in the wintertime, November to March, I take a 30 to 50% revenue cut per month every year. So imagine that, right? And then you come into spring, and like I couldn't paint a house for free in October, knowing we had like 1 month left of exterior season before I have 6 months of like, you know, just struggling to pay bills and try to get work on the books. So basically, I ran out of time. Told them, hey, you know, I have, you know, if it's possible and you're willing to wait until spring, I'll stain your deck as well for free. His neighbor was a chemist for Sherwin-Williams, so that guy had access to a lot of paint, so the homeowner provided the paint, and yeah, I ended up, you know, spraying the whole house out for him, and I didn't, you know, it got done pretty quick, but the problem was I'm doing this coming out of spring, and I'm trying to like pay the bills and smack out a couple deck stains to get some money in the account, and either way it hurt. You know, there was days where I was putting in 12, 13-hour days, and I'm doing this project while I'm doing another one that's low profit. So in the wintertime, as I said, where I take small deposits, sometimes I've learned where winter's slow, if I start getting a couple leads that trickle in towards the tail end of the year, you can take more of a deposit, right? Instead of taking like a $500 deposit, if it's a full exterior that's a really big project, you might be like, well, I'll take 30%. Some people take 50%. Now, I don't want to get myself in a hole where I'm taking money to pay bills for winter and then working at half my labor rate because I had to pay my bills to survive winter. Now, if you're a two income family or you're single and your like debt to income ratio is really low, it's not going to affect you. But if you're a family man, like my wife homeschools my kids, and my expenses are pretty high, you know, and I make good money, but it's like one job goes wrong and it could take me a month to catch up. So that's kind of what happened here, where this got me behind. I had a low profit job, and then this job I was doing practically for free. And, you know, that's the way it works. When it rains, it pours. I had two of those jobs going on at the same time. So I've been trying to crawl myself out of this hole. And once you get behind on a couple bills or low profit jobs, it's very difficult to get ahead fast without putting excessive hours in or working weekends. And then if you work yourself too hard, you can get burnt out or pull a back muscle, etc. So the key to this is you need to find a way to increase your prices enough where you're supporting your lifestyle and your bills on what you need. Like, so many people emphasize on what other painting contractors are charging. I know what they're charging. In the last bid that I put through, I bumped it like 30 or 40%. I should have bumped it more because I'm not getting the profit margins that I need. And I've been in business for several years now, and I've got referrals. People know I do good quality work, and I still know, even with that being said, that there's larger painting companies here that are probably double or triple my rates. So I don't feel bad with inflation and increasing my prices. And the worst that's going to happen is people are going to say, no, I'm already booked out till summer or fall. The problem is, am I going to make enough profit margin to survive the slow times in the winter and supplement those slower times without having to go get a second job or, work twice the amount of hours to make the same pay in a week? Because that's just, nobody wants to do that. So that's the first problem I ran into. We did a trade for trade, and he's going to continue to run issues for me on the house for free. Super nice guy. I'm thankful for that. But here's the next issue that I ran into. I had a I had a project where it was a 5-acre fence staining job in our area. Again, super nice homeowners, not their fault. Nothing that they did wrong. It's more my fault. But again, as I said, I normally only take a deposit of like $500, right? Well, this was a massive 5-acre fence that needed to be stained on the inside and the outside that they wanted. They had a small deck out front to be stained. They had some railings that needed to be stained on a second story balcony. Then they had all of the trim on their house and garage. They wanted painted tricorn black, and there's even a door to be restained. So there's multiple projects, and it was a lot of work. So I put through a bid that was several $1,000s, and they accepted it. And when I put through the deposit, this was coming into the fall, I knew, okay, this is the last month. So I have two options. I can take a minimal deposit and jump right on that job in spring, but I knew that there was a high probability I'm going to have a decrease in workflow. So I asked for a little more. I didn't want to ask for too much, knowing that some of this was going to go towards bills. But yeah, I kind of had to front load some of that money to supplement me through winter, knowing that I'd make it up quickly if I'm efficient and profitable in spring and go in and work some Saturdays and stuff like that. So you can get ahead pretty quick as long as you're consistent and you're priced profitably. So I asked for about $3,250, and I charged through my Square app. And with Square app, when you charge that, they take a small processing fee like any other payment processing platform. So if I charge $3,250, it's not the full $3,250 I get in my account. And then it takes 1 to 2 business days to clear into your checking, your credit union or bank checking if you're using that for your personal expenses. And they give you the option to instant transfer if you're willing to pay an extra 1.75%. So that doesn't sound like a lot, but if you add it up over the year, this could be thousands of dollars that you're paying in processing fees, and that hurts you. But the alternative is, yeah, I could have went and picked up a check, but I started doing that when I started my painting business, and then what I found was, unless it's a massive project, like massive, where you're like 20, 30 grand plus, then that's going to add up where it's like, hey, if someone's going to give you a check, you probably want to take that. But I work for a lot of clients that are out of state, or maybe I'm not able to meet up with them because I'm on another job. So for me to send out a proposal from my phone through Square, and I can see when they read it, at what time, or how many hours ago. I can even message them on the app. I can send out reminders. So if I bill them and they're late on an invoice, I can send them a reminder to pay. And it's easy for like bookkeeping, or not bookkeeping, but tracking data. It will show you over the last few years what your average gross pay is for each month running your business, how much you're taking in gross. So there's a lot of cool things with that app that kind of make it worthwhile. But long story short, I took the $3,250 and I said, okay, yeah, there's 3 different elements to this job. We have a fence stain, we have a deck stain, we have a porch railing restain, and then we have the trim around the house that needs to get repainted. And they had a couple add-ons for like touch-ups on the body, but that was, in essence, there was 3 components of this. And the primary driver of that profit and the scope of that work was the fence stain. So I noticed they had some contractors out there the other day driving commercial trucks, and they said it was like the area code roofing company, like, and then it would say that they fix ice dams, and they were going up to look at their skylight. So I was like, okay, they might have a roof leak or something. Well, this was an unexpected expense. Now they had already paid me the $3,250, and based on the smallest scope of work was repainting the trim, doing some touch-ups, and the deck stain. It was a small porch, so like the fence stain job was like 3 times the cost of the work that I actually provided. Okay, and So anyways, I said, well, I'm going to come in there. I'm going to do the trim first. I'll do the deck and the railings, and then I'll come back for the fence in like 2 or 3 weeks. Well, I bought stain to sample the fence. I'm talking with them. I'm making phone calls to Sherwin. We're trying to figure out colors. And then they tell me, hey, we're going to have to cancel the fence stain or postpone it. And I said, um, they said, we're going to postpone it due to funds, unexpected funds. We're so sorry. And I'm like, okay, shit, because they gave me $32.50, which I put towards my mortgage and bills for my family back in the wintertime. And again, I don't do this often, but sometimes I'll do it with a few jobs. Like there might be like 2 or 3 jobs where I'll be like, either way I'm going to do it. I know I'll catch up by the time I get to them in terms of profit. So if I can get an extra, couple thousand in my bank account to it helps. So I knew it was a risk in doing it. And sure enough, the one job that I took more than $500 for a deposit, so far, I am net positive based on what I billed them to do the trim. I think it was like 2,100, 600 for the railings, and 800 for the front deck porch area, they were all really small, pretty quick jobs. And so, and then on top of that, there was a few add-ons, like they want their front door stained, which I'm going to get to here in the next day or so, and a couple other add-ons. But in essence, I'm net positive that $32.50 by about, I don't know, $500 to $800, right? So I've been there for several days trying to get all this stuff done, and because I spent that $32.50 in the wintertime to support my family and put food on the table and supplement those ebbs and flows with my work, I was expecting to get, because I broke the whole project up into 3 payments, into thirds. We had a deposit, and what's left is thirds at milestones. Doesn't matter, we're not going to incrementally bill, just split it right down the middle. Here's $32.50 deposit, and then the rest is a third at the trim, 2/3 at the deck and railings, and 3/3 at the fence, because I'd be theoretically doing them back to back. So I was supposed to get a payment of like $4,000 plus today or tomorrow. And when you have overhead, if you potentially have a helper, you have a family to take care of, like we talked about earlier, being a one income family, I have to, I'm supporting 2 children and a wife that's a homemaker, along with 2 dogs, mortgage, car payments, everything else. I'm stretched pretty thin, and I can get stuff done and I can pay the bills and I can sometimes get ahead if I really work hard, but it's pretty difficult when I run into situations like this. They tell me, Scott, we're sorry to spring this on you, but we're so sorry, but an unexpected expense came up, we're going to have to postpone. And I said, well, do you mean postpone? Like what we can do is maybe half the fence, this year, and I can come back and do the other half next year, or we can postpone the whole thing. But, I was trying to get it so that they'd still pay the $4,000, and then I could just collect the rest and be like, the 2/3 of the remaining initial bid I will collect, and we can push this out till 2025. And I'll honor the price. We'll do it then. That way everyone's happy. I'm still getting a few $1,000s right now, which will cover some of my overhead to get some paint, pay my bills, and if you have a helper, pay them until you get into your next job, it's not the end of the world. I've got plenty of work, but the fact of the matter and the issue here is that I got blindsided because my expectation based on what I was putting my money towards that's already in my bank account. When you think you're going to get a check for 4,000, then someone the day of says, "Just kidding," it's like, oh well, I wouldn't have bought this and that and bought all the paint for this next job if I had known that was coming in. So yeah, I'm still net positive, so it's not like I'm giving them back some money. And I even say in my contract that the deposit's non-refundable. But at the end of the day, it still threw off my scheduling. It threw off, and I know it's not their fault, but it threw me off in terms of cash flow management. And now, I had another situation where this client has a second home, which is the project I'm actually working on right now, right? This is the concurrent project I just started, and it's going to be a good profit job. I priced it effectively. I'm moving through it pretty quick, but here's the problem. I bill this client through Square App because he's in California, and I'm here in Oregon, right? And I'm when I billed him through Square for an invoice, expecting to get paid that day or the next day because payments due at the time of invoice. So when I went to pressure wash, okay, we're starting the job. Here's your bill. Like again, splitting it into halves or thirds or fourths or whatever. there was an installment due that day. And you know what this client told me? He said, well, Scott, if it's okay, I'm going to mail a check just so I have time to move funds. And I'm thinking to myself, he's a good guy, don't get me wrong, but I'm thinking, that's not really my problem. Like, you have to move funds. What are you talking about? Like, and if he, theoretically, by getting that check, I get more money because Square would take their processing fees. But the point of the matter is, I needed money in my account at that time for various reasons, to exist as a human and to run overhead in my company. But because this guy decided to mail out a check, it took me, he said, oh, you should get it on Thursday. Well, it turned out I didn't get it until like Saturday, right? Which is not the end of the world, but it throws everything off. So I've had these 3 situations happen to me practically back to back, which is where at this point in the season, I should be up here, but I'm actually down here. I'm just coasting by to pay my bills, and I should be having excess money in my account because of these 3 back-to-back homes that have given me some issues here. So if you're starting a painting business and if you're still watching this video, there's a few things that I would encourage you to do. Number 1, put in your contract, or if you send out a PDF, if you don't go the route of having somebody physically sign something or use DocuSign or some platform that allows you to do that, then what we can also do is put in the PDF with the description of the scope of work payment terms. And under payment terms, you could say payment due at the time of invoice, any change orders or any late payments may incur a fee, deposit is non-refundable but deducted off the total project price. And it's something along those lines. And payment of deposit is considered a digital signature in agreement to all terms. Now, I don't know if that would actually hold up in court, but if you don't want somebody to physically sign, just having that, or even you could even send a follow-up email and say, hey, can you just acknowledge via email that you read the terms and you agreed to them? That's the same thing that would hold up in court. But for me, I just tell people, open the PDF, all of the scope of work and the payment terms and any other additional terms are in there. Please read that. Let me know if you have any questions, and then everything is there that needs to be there. So I could have charged these guys a cancellation fee, right? Or anything like that. But if you don't, what I also had to do is I had to add into my contracts from now on that mailed checks will not be accepted. Because what people do is they say, well, I'll put the check in the mail today. And then you follow up in like a week and you're like, hey, Carl, I haven't received the check. And they go, oh, I'm so sorry, it skipped my mind. And I tell them, like, you can Venmo me, you can Zelle. And a lot of these people, they're boomers or older, and they're just, which, no offense if you're one, but it's like, come on, man, get with the times. Like, nobody has time. Not everybody that runs a painting business has thousands of dollars sitting there in their account, right? If you don't have a massive company with several people on payroll and you're making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, some of us are just trying to put food on the table for our wives and our kids and just friggin' exist. And, I make good money, but come on, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that inflation's at a 40-year high, meaning for the last 4 decades, things cost more than they've ever cost. Okay, things are getting more expensive, and I still have to cut the check and pay the bill and the tab for everything for my family to make sure they're taken care of. So just because everything's relative to your perception, just because you're retired and you have a lot of money in your bank account and you're comfortable, doesn't mean that you should make the assumption that the painter that's there just because he's self-employed or has a business is somehow doing okay, where he can just wait 30 days or 7 days or 14 days or 60 or 90 days to wait for a check to come in the mail or a payment, unless those terms are agreed upon on the front end. So in short, always make sure you communicate your terms. Write something in there so that you're not getting boxed out where, in the event you're in a similar situation, you're a family man and you're paying for a whole family, you're trying to make a living, where in the rare case, which I don't encourage this practice, but in the rare case when it's feast or famine and you're in famine in the winter and you're like, shit, I shouldn't spend this money, but I'm not, and don't do it out of greed, or like, you don't want to be irresponsible and spend it on stupid stuff. But if you needed to pay your mortgage for 1 month and you could take a deposit and get 30 or 50% to do that, knowing that you're going to still follow through and do a quality job and take the hit on that and make that time up, or just take the hit altogether, then there's nothing wrong with that, right? But where you get in trouble is if someone backs out when they've paid that to you, unless you have in your terms that that deposit is non-refundable. And if you haven't performed the work, it can also just leave a bad taste in their mouth. Like another example, had somebody that bought a home, a mobile home. She's like, "Oh, I'm gonna move in there in like 2 or 3 weeks, and can you get over there, Scott?" And I gave her a bid. Sounds great. It was the winter time. I was gonna jump right on her project in like 4 days. So I said, "Perfect." The whole project was like 5 or 7 grand. I sent her an invoice for 50%. Said, "Hey, let's do this." It was like such a small project. It's like 50% up front, like 2,500 up front, 2,500 or 27 or 28, whatever. And she paid it, right? Of course, I paid for my bills and for food and shit like that. And then, like 2 days later, she's like, "Oh, the sale fell through." And I had in my contract when I had rushed to send that out because I would have never in a million years, when someone's purchasing a house and I have the realtor that lives in that mobile home park tell me that she's under contract, never in a million years would I think that this lady's gonna back out of the sale and then ask for her money back. And that's exactly what happened. So there's another example where thankfully I had spent only a portion of that and I had another invoice paid where I was able to return that money to her. But for a minute there, I thought that I was actually net positive and that I was jumping onto a job that I could smack out and get a couple grand in my account when I desperately needed it. So these are all things that you're probably going to learn at some point in your life if you're running a painting business or you're self-employed. And I just implore you to, it can really weigh on you. Like this happened to me today. And I'm not trying to promote drinking or anything like that, but I do like beer. Boneyard's a great beer. It's one of my favorite RPM. It's a good IPA here in our area. If you're from the area, you'll probably recognize it, but if not, it's a great beer. But I'm not promoting this to minors or anybody or advocating for drinking. I'm just saying that I'm feeling it today, and I'm a little frustrated. I'm not blaming anybody, but just when you think that you've learned all the hard lessons, like this is going to be the year. I've learned hard lessons every single year since I've been in business, and I thought I had it all figured out, having 18 years experience painting. But I will tell you, you will still get kicked in the balls. You will. You will when you're going to have times where you're profitable and things are moving slow or moving right along, and it seems like everything's going well, and then you're going to get blindsided, and those times are going to really test your character, and they're going to make you wonder if you should even just throw in the friggin' towel or you should keep powering through. But as the old saying goes, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So hope this helps for today, guys. I know we're at almost a half hour of me rambling, but I know that this quality is a little better than me driving in the truck earlier. That audio quality wasn't that great. So if you're still with me, thank you. If this interests you or you get a kick out of it and you're interested in some other content, feel free to subscribe. And yeah, take it easy, guys. Hope you're all doing well.